Federal prosecutors just unsealed one of the largest marriage fraud cases in U.S. history, a decade-long network that allegedly arranged more than 1,000 fake marriages, collecting tens of millions of dollars in the process. Welcome back to US Visa News Hub. I'm Mr. Burhan, and if you're not subscribed yet, this is exactly the kind of update you don't want to miss. This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult a licensed immigration attorney for guidance specific to your situation. On August 12, 2026, an indictment was unsealed in the Southern District of New York, charging 11 individuals with running what prosecutors are calling one of the largest marriage fraud schemes ever prosecuted in the United States. According to the indictment, from at least 2016 through July of this year, the defendants operated a nationwide and international network that arranged sham marriages between foreign nationals, primarily citizens of the People's Republic of China, and U.S. citizens, specifically to help those foreign nationals fraudulently obtain lawful permanent resident status, commonly known as a green card. This video is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult a licensed immigration attorney for guidance specific to your case. Let's talk about the scale of this operation because it's genuinely staggering. While based primarily in New York City, the network reportedly extended into Connecticut, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, and Florida, and internationally into China and even the Pacific island nation of Vanuatu. Attorney General Todd Blanche described it at a news conference as a years-long, multi-million-dollar cottage industry, and prosecutors say the operation took in tens of millions of dollars since 2016. Homeland Security Investigations Acting Director John Condon put it even more bluntly, describing the operation as turning marriage fraud into an actual international business model. Here's how prosecutors say the scheme was structured, and understanding the roles involved helps explain why authorities are describing this as a sophisticated criminal enterprise rather than a handful of isolated fake marriages. The indictment describes 3 distinct roles within the network. Facilitators oversaw the overall operation and identified foreign nationals who wanted a green card through this route. Recruiters found U.S. citizens willing to participate in sham marriages and helped ensure they stayed involved throughout the process. And assistants handled the actual paperwork, preparing and coordinating the submission of fraudulent green card applications and supporting documents to USCIS. Now let's talk about the money, because this is where the scale of the operation really becomes clear. According to the indictment, foreign nationals paid facilitators as much as $100,000 for a sham marriage and help obtaining lawful permanent resident status. On the other side, participating U.S. citizens were reportedly paid up to $30,000, generally in installments tied to specific milestones in the green card application process, meaning a payment for agreeing to the marriage, another payment when the foreign national's immigration status moved forward, and so on. Recruiters, meanwhile, reportedly earned commissions of roughly $5,000 for each U.S. citizen they successfully brought into the scheme. That kind of structured, milestone-based payment system is part of why prosecutors are describing this as a business model rather than a series of one-off fraud cases. The 11 people named in the indictment are Amy Cheng, age 72, Xiao Mei Chan, 64, Christine Liu, 52, Jing Yan Yi, 43, Xiao Yang Chen, 48, Gang Zheng, 61, Anthony Cheng, 47, Michelle Duenas, 35, Angela Duenas, 26, Sigrid Cetino, 32, and Erica Johnson, 43. According to reporting, the defendants are naturalized U.S. citizens originally from China, along with one green card holder. Each defendant faces 1 count of conspiracy to commit marriage fraud and immigration document fraud, which carries a maximum sentence of 5 years in prison, along with 1 count of conspiracy to encourage the unlawful residence of aliens in the United States, which carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. It's important to be clear about something here, because it matters both legally and in terms of how we should talk about this case. An indictment is only a formal set of accusations. Every one of these defendants is presumed innocent unless and until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt in a court of law. This case is now moving through the federal court system, and nothing has been proven yet in front of a judge or jury. That said, officials involved in the investigation made their views on the underlying conduct clear at the announcement. USCIS Director Joseph Edlow stated that anyone willing to lie, cheat, or steal their way to legal immigration status represents a direct threat to national security, and emphasized that USCIS is actively targeting marriage fraud schemes and the criminal networks profiting from them. Attorney General Blanche framed it as part of a broader Justice Department effort to root out fraud throughout the immigration system. U.S. Attorney Jamie McDonald for the Southern District of New York described the network as a nationwide and international multi-million-dollar scheme that abused U.S. immigration laws for profit. The investigation itself involved close coordination between USCIS, the Department of Homeland Security, Homeland Security Investigations, and the FBI. Now, here's a question that naturally comes up when a case like this becomes public. What actually happens to the foreign nationals who went through these sham marriages? Some of them, according to Attorney General Blanche's own comments at the press conference, may already have green cards. Some may have even gone on to become naturalized U.S. citizens. When directly asked whether people who obtained status through this scheme would have that status revoked or face deportation, Blanche was notably measured in his response, saying it depends on the circumstances, and confirming that the Justice Department is actively looking into thousands of individual marriages connected to this broader network. That's a meaningful detail because it tells you this case likely isn't fully resolved with just these 11 indictments. There may be a much longer tail of individual immigration consequences still to come for people connected to this network, separate from the criminal charges against the alleged organizers. So let's talk about why this case matters beyond just being a dramatic headline, because it has real, practical relevance if you're going through a legitimate, marriage-based green card process right now. Marriage fraud investigations like this one are part of exactly why USCIS has become increasingly rigorous in how it evaluates bona fide marriage evidence in ordinary legitimate cases, a pattern we've actually covered before on this channel. When large-scale fraud rings like this get uncovered, it tends to reinforce and justify the kind of heightened scrutiny that honest, real couples are now experiencing during their own marriage-based interviews. More detailed questions, more documentation requirements, and less willingness from officers to take evidence like a shared lease or a handful of photos at face value. In other words, large fraud cases like this one are part of the broader context behind why marriage-based green card cases have gotten harder to prove, even for couples who are completely genuine. It's also worth understanding what USCIS and investigators actually look for that tends to expose schemes like this one. According to the indictment, part of how this fraud allegedly worked involved staged wedding ceremonies and photographs specifically created to be presented to USCIS as evidence of a real relationship. Imagery designed to suggest a loving, committed marriage that, according to prosecutors, didn't actually exist. This is exactly the kind of surface-level evidence that USCIS officers have become much more skeptical of in recent years, precisely because schemes like this one have shown how easily staged photos and documents can be manufactured. If you're going through a legitimate marriage-based case yourself, this case is a good reminder of why deeper evidence, your actual shared history, consistent details about your life together, and genuine documentation beyond just staged appearances matters so much more than it used to. This case also highlights something important about how seriously immigration fraud is being prosecuted right now more broadly. This isn't an isolated announcement. USCIS has been playing a supporting role in a steady stream of fraud-related indictments and prosecutions throughout 2026, spanning asylum fraud, identity theft connected to naturalization, and now this marriage fraud network. If you're a legitimate applicant going through any of these processes, none of this changes your actual eligibility, but it does mean you should expect the overall system to be operating with heightened suspicion and more thorough verification than it may have in past years. So what should you actually take away from this if you're currently in, or considering, a marriage-based green card process yourself? First, this case is a clear reminder that USCIS and federal law enforcement are actively investing significant resources into uncovering organized fraud, which means legitimate couples should expect real scrutiny and should be prepared to document their relationship thoroughly and honestly, well beyond just photos and a marriage certificate. Second, if you are a US citizen who has ever been approached, whether by an acquaintance, an online contact, or anyone else, with an offer of payment to marry a foreign national for immigration purposes, understand clearly that participating in that kind of arrangement is a serious federal crime, carrying real prison time, regardless of how the offer might be framed or how small your role might seem to be. Third, if you have any concerns about the legitimacy of your own case, or if you're worried that something in your immigration history could be connected to fraud you weren't fully aware of, this is exactly the kind of situation where consulting an immigration attorney promptly, rather than waiting, is the right move, particularly given Attorney General Blanche's comment that thousands of individual marriages connected to this broader investigation are still being examined. We'll continue to follow this case as it moves through the federal court system, including whether we see any related civil immigration consequences, like denaturalization or green card revocation proceedings, connected to the broader network beyond just these 11 criminal defendants. If this was helpful, share it with anyone you know who might find this story relevant, and subscribe to US Visa News Hub so you don't miss how this case develops. Thank you for watching. This video is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice. Please consult a licensed immigration attorney for guidance specific to your situation.